The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
And back again, the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. Jason Bryant here with you. This show, news, reviews, previews, and interviews for all the pertinent topics in the sport of wrestling. Today, our guest rejoining the program, 1FC welterweight champion, four-time All-American, all-around good disc golf player, Ben Askren. Welcome back to the Short Time Wrestling Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jason. I appreciate it.
So, disc golf. I mean, how much disc golf do you get to play in Wisconsin in the wintertime?
Well, you know what? It's not much the winter. It's the three kids that's killing me on the disc golf course. I did just drive by one of the main ones in Milwaukee, which I thought was closed for the winter, but it's actually open, and we have some decent weather this week, so I might even try to sneak out.
They're redoing the closest disc golf course to my house, and it's like construction everywhere, and it's all the snow. Like you said, it's getting a little warm up here in the upper Midwest, and warm for us is like 35. So it's it's all muddy right now. I think
we're at 38 today. Yeah, it's relative.
I'm a bit of a snob when it comes to when I get out to play. I got to play when it's like I can't just be trogging through the mud. The first time I ever played, it was trogging through the mud. I got sick. I'm like, I love the game, but it's just like I got to find the right time. But you're right. The kids, I got two girls. The time to get away from the house to play disc golf is limited these days.
Absolutely. But last week was like, dude, it didn't get over 5 degrees for about 10 days straight. And so this 38 degrees and the sun out feels like we're in a tropical paradise. I'm just like, I need to get outside. I think I was outside for like 3 hours yesterday. I just had to find some type of reason to get outside because I've been trapped inside for about 15 days straight.
Well, I work from home, so I've got a lot of that trapped inside. So I was in Texas, so I was down there. I was like, all right, people are like, oh, freeze, man, it's 55 degrees. I'm like, break out the shorts, man.
Yeah, for real.
So the reason we have Ben on the show today is he is obviously the mind behind one of the minds behind the successful Askren Wrestling Academy up in the state of Wisconsin at awawisconsin.com. Now, USA Wrestling's trying this thing out, and it's called Give Wrestling a Shot at givewrestlingashot.com. Next week, January 15th through 21st, the opportunity to check out a wrestling club, a USA chartered club, and not have to worry about buying a USA card. And Ben, you've been kind of spearheading this effort. Why is Give Wrestling a Shot Week something unique and we need in the sport?
Sure. So it was, Max had an idea that was very similar to, so USA Wrestling had this Give Wrestling a Shot program. Max had something similar. And the idea is that, everything today is about a movement or putting power behind something. And so, one person has to do something to go, get new kids out. That's a lot of effort for that one club to do. And so we can put the social media behind it, right? And everyone can use the same thing. That's kind of a power of the masses, right? And, when it comes down to it, the numbers are flat out scary. There's a roughly 60% retention rate year over year in wrestling. That those numbers are provided by USA Wrestling. And so when you look at Max and I talk about all the time, I mean, wrestling has to change that. And if AWA's retention rate was 60% year over year, we would be out of business, plain and simple. And so, Max and I are constantly trying to think of ways not only to obviously help ourselves, but ways that can help the entire sport of wrestling. Because we both know what wrestling has done for us and what it can do for a lot of other kids. And I think there's a lot of opportunities that wrestling provides today that kids aren't getting other places. Society's changed a lot in the last 20 years. And so wrestling is a place where you can go be rough, you can get your energy out, and it's okay, right? I mean, hell, if you went to a double leg takedown on someone in the playground in 2017, you might just get expelled or something. And so to be able to go do that in the safety of a wrestling room with coaches that are knowledgeable around, that's a fantastic opportunity for kids, especially high-energy kids, which there's a lot of them. And in my opinion, society is over-medicating them when all they need is a little more exercise and a little more purpose in their lives. Not to get on a soapbox.
Oh, no, I totally expect soapboxes, but you and Tommy Rollins have talked about this a lot on your show, the T-Row and Funky Show, which if you haven't listened to it, you can go to matttalkonline.com/directory. There's a list of all the podcast shows. Go right there and check it out because you guys have gone off on tangents about youth wrestling, especially with Tommy's kids as they're wrestling. That you talked about the activities and giving kids some purpose. We're in a society where we got a lot of coddling, we got a lot of video games. I'm sitting here. We're both probably going to have the same situations on how do we treat our kids as they get older. But when they're somebody else's kids and you're coaching, I guess it's a little different now as a parent. Why do you think most people are resistant to getting their kid into wrestling right now?
Well, so I think there's two problems, Jason, right? Obviously, there's the retention, right, that's a totally separate problem. And that's one I think that's the one that almost should be addressed more, right? Because at that point, you have the kids in the wrestling room, they're trying the sport, and obviously I understand every sport is not going to have 100% retention. It's impossible. I get it, right? But thinking that 60% is good is wrong. So we have to address that problem also, because if we just kept 80% of the kids we have instead of 60 year over year, we would be at a totally different place number-wise in 5 years. So, that's a totally separate problem. Now, the other problem is, how do we get kids to try wrestling? And that's where, to give wrestling a shot, like this program is called. And that's where I think we have to think outside of ourselves. A lot of wrestling people want to think just about ourselves and what our experience is and what our vision is. And so the singlet one is a great example, right? All traditional wrestling people say, why would we ever not do the singlet? That's freaking stupid. Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, I get it. I've worn a singlet for 25 years. It's no big deal to me. I get it, right? But for a brand new kid who has to come out in tights and show off his junk, they don't want to do that. And now I'm not saying this is going to raise our numbers by 50%. I'm not saying that. But if it's 3% or 5%, right, that could be a big deal, especially if our retention increases. So we have to look at what are the factors limiting kids from trying wrestling. And, a singlet would be a great example of one. The perception that you have to cut weight, which is weight cutting is getting a lot less prevalent than it was, say, 20 years ago, but it's still there. And obviously the perception is that it's still there. And so that's scary to a lot of people. And, people who are parents today were around wrestling when freaking idiot kids in high school were walking around sitting in cups and walking in plastics all day. And so if we look at all these issues, what is keeping kids from wrestling, right? What is keeping them from trying it? And so then you try to start eliminating all these factors. And just like anything, like a business, you have to constantly promote. And so that's why, this Give Wrestling a Shot is a great idea, because the promotion is coming from one place and every single club can use it, so they don't have to go through that effort of creating promotions or creating stuff to put out there, creating messages about that, because the messages are already put out for them. And most club coaches they're volunteers. They're a volunteer base. They have another job. They probably got a family. They're busy. They don't have an extra 5 to 10 hours a week to go create content to market their wrestling program. So if we can do that for them, that's going to help out a lot. So I think when we number one, we just start identifying the factors. Number two, we have to start marketing ourselves harder to the general public to get people into the sport.
One thing I did this morning in kind of the prelude for this episode and kind of teasing to it was saying, a lot of people on my Facebook account, they're not wrestling people. So I reached out and say, hey, a lot of you aren't wrestling people. You have kids. If you're thinking about trying, here's an opportunity. And when you look at that, what age do you think is a time for a parent to say, all right, let's stick them in wrestling? Because I started wrestling late. I was 16 when I stepped on the mat for the first time.
Yeah.
And that thing that was a barrier to entry to me as a chunky kid. I've explained that on other episodes.
Thank you. Will you tell people this? People think
they
that
don't
I'm
listen to
crazy
me.
when I say it.
They don't listen to me because I don't have the wrestling career, man. I've spent more time looking at the lights than I did actually setting up a shot. So, but, I mean, I fell in love with the sport.
Yeah.
But
no, it's barrier to entry. You're absolutely right.
But yeah, for the chunky kid, especially the 16-year-old chunky kid, now this is where I get back to the question. When the kids are younger, they don't necessarily have that aversion. They're not hitting the puberty. So when you look at the right age to maybe start, not necessarily go full bore and go, all right, we're going to Tulsa Nationals, which is another, again, side tangent.
Yeah.
But where do you think the right age is to start?
I think anything 5 and up. Right? And like you said, some kids like yourself, I mean, we are going to miss out at an early age. Does that mean they can't start when they're older? Absolutely not. I mean, we've had a couple of kids at our club now who started later and are having a lot of success, right? Because they really put their mind to it. And So I don't think you absolutely don't have to start at 5 or 6 or 7 to be successful. You can start later on in life to be successful. Obviously, starting early does help, but then you obviously have to, well, you said the retention factor. It's 60%. So that means a lot of kids, if the retention rate is 60%, what it means, and what I should say to everybody is these kids are having a poor experience, such a poor experience that they're choosing not to come back. And your traditional wrestling folks would say, well, they're just not tough enough. They just don't want to work hard. That's not true. That's false. That's you making an excuse to why your practices are so shitty and that kid's experience is so poor that he didn't come back. And so now we have to start figuring out, well, what is it? Is it that we're making cut weight? Yeah, that's terrible for anyone under 12 should not be cutting weight, right? Is it that they're over competing? Yeah, a 7-year-old shouldn't be traveling the country and competing nationally. They probably shouldn't be having 40 matches a year. That Jason, in my experience, that's borderline child abuse. And I think all national tournaments, and obviously I understand you can't do this because it's a free market. Well, then someone else will come set up a 6-year-old nationals. But some of these national tournaments who have a 6 and under division, that's freaking child abuse. It's child abuse, period. Should not be done. Shouldn't exist. 8 and under shouldn't exist. We should not have national championships at those age groups. And the 60% retention, I'm not making these statistics up, Jason. These statistics are from USA Wrestling. 60%. We need to look at ourselves in the mirror, and we need to say it's not because kids aren't tough enough. It's not because kids don't want to work hard. It's because our youth system is simply set up for most people to produce a handful of really good kids and make a whole bunch of kids quit. That's what it's set up for, plain and simple. We need to change. The whole sport needs to change.
We look at those changes. I was actually talking. I was talking with Coach Gable last night as we were coming back from Texas about my high school coach, and he was asking, just questions about, my background. I says my high school coach, his name was Billy Ruff. He actually had. We were a small AA school, so we had the situation where we got some hammers. We had a real good club locally. We had some nationally ranked guys on the team. We had 8 hammers and 6 not so hammers. So those 8 hammers would have to cover 37 points to cover the 36, the 6 guys. And there were a lot of teams, and these are the year or so after I graduated, there were a lot of dual meets that were 37, 36. But, the coaching staff had to spend the time at the high school level on the guys that were walking the hallways, or they were the backups. It wasn't like, okay, let's get our hammers in and run everybody off. So my coach really had to take the first-time kid as a 9th grader and turn him into a state qualifier as a senior just for the school to be competitive. When you look at the various age groups from that level of coaching, that level of competition, how do you think things can change for this type of Give Wrestling a Shot program for a 9th grader versus a 10-year-old? How are they similar? How are they different with retention?
Well, wrestling has something to offer everybody. Plain and simple, it does. And so when we talk about retention, it's all about their experience. Kid has a good experience, they're going to stick around. If they have a crappy experience, they're not going to be around, right? And obviously, and this is another thing that people don't want to admit to, but the only people who win state championships aren't the only people who get something out of wrestling. Only people who get college scholarships aren't the only people who get something out of wrestling, right? There's plenty of people, and you can attest to this, that do wrestling that maybe don't have a huge amount of success and still learn lessons from the sport. Valuable life lessons. And there's no one on the face of the earth that would argue a state championship as a high school senior is going to be more valuable than setting up someone with great values for their life. They're just not comparable. So, we as a culture need to admit that wrestling gives other values, and we say it. We say it all the time. But then we only value those kids who win state titles. And, it sounds like you had a really good coach, Jason, and when we talk about retention rates and then being 60% nationwide. I mean, ours at AWA is 90%, right? Maybe slightly higher. And it's because, and I'll tell you, one of the key reasons, we give everybody love. Everybody gets attention. Everyone gets love. It's not just the best kids in the room. And whether you're 5 years old, whether you're 10 years old, whether you're 15, Jason, whether you're 50 years old, you want someone to care about you. You want someone to give a strong effort for you to be successful. And you want someone who you enjoy being around. That doesn't matter how old you are. That doesn't matter how good you are. That doesn't matter who you are. That is just across the board. That is what people want. And so, when you look at a lot of these programs, They're catering only to their best kids, right? Not to everybody. And so what does it do? It runs a lot of people off. And that's, again, I'm not making, this is not an opinion piece by me. It's not. The nationwide statistics are 60% year over year. And so let me just quantify this for you. That doesn't mean 60% from K to 8, right? That means 60% year over year. It means if your club started with 100 people and you're just the average club in the United States, next year you're going to have 60, Jason. The year after that, you're going to have 36 of those original 100 kids. The year after that, you're going to have right around 22 of those original 100 kids in 3 years. So, Jason, if you had 100 first graders start, if you follow the average national retention rate, by the time they're in third grade, we're not talking high school. By the time they're in third grade, you're going to have 22 of them. That is terrible. It's unacceptable, right? And obviously, I know that you're going to bring some new kids into the program at a time, but if our retention rate just goes up by 10% or 20%, all of a sudden the number that creates across the country is astounding. It's gigantic. And so we really need to take a strong look at ourselves in the mirror and say, okay, we need to get these kids to give wrestling a shot. But once they do give wrestling a shot, what are we going to do to keep them around? What are we going to do to make their experience so great that they take those lessons on into life and that they don't quit the sport because they're actually enjoying it?
All right, I'm going to set this one up too because this is kind of a loaded question, and it's gonna throw it into a kind of a tangent, but it's all related. So, I played baseball 7th grade. My friends played baseball. Those kids had played baseball or t-ball. So, and the retention rate in baseball is higher than wrestling. I'm going to assume you've probably got the stats on this. I'm going to assume
I do not have the stats on that.
All right, well, maybe it's a bad example. Let's just start with the original question then. So, all right, so I got 22 third graders that started in the first grade. Let's keep going on those rates. So by the time they get into middle school, we've got maybe 7 kids, or 5 or 6 or 7 kids that have wrestled long enough to have exposed the sport to their friends. Who are wrestling's best advocates? Wrestlers. We don't have any wrestlers to expose to their friends. Like, I knew 3 wrestlers growing up, and I didn't start wrestling until I was in high school. So if there's but I knew everybody in my neighborhood played basketball, so I had 20 friends that played basketball and 3 who wrestled. What sport am I going to play as a kid to hang out with my friends? So that retention rate, kids follow leaders, and if leaders are wrestlers, they can get people out. But the benefits of wrestling, I mean, we wear wrestling T-shirts to promote wrestling, not because it's just the only thing we've got to wear. Why can what can that retention rate? It is the only
thing I have to wear, though.
Well, I'm 273.
Well, Jason, the thing you're not even adding into this, right?
Go ahead.
The thing you're not even adding into this is, so if we go from that 100 to 22, which is a nationwide average, that means 78 kids out of that 100 had a bad enough experience that they quit. Do you think those 78 kids are saying positive things to their friends?
Absolutely
all of them
not.
have friends. All those 78 kids have friends. Some of them might have a couple, some of them might have a lot, right? And what they're saying to their friends, because they quit wrestling, they're saying, don't do wrestling, that's stupid. The coach is an a-hole. Don't do wrestling, that's stupid because you had to cut a lot of weight, right? They're saying something poor about the sport of wrestling. They're not saying, those kids who quit aren't saying, hey man, you got to try wrestling. It was a great experience. They're not saying that. So we got it. Not only those 78 that quit aren't in the numbers anymore, right? Those 78 who quit are now probably speaking, most likely, not in a positive light about the sport of wrestling.
I'm curious on your discussion. First time comes into it, and I'm not talking maybe the elite super camps that the clubs that are like really high intensity training. They're looking to get those kids to win Fargo ties, but this is what we're talking about. We're talking about the entry level. What conversation do you have with a parent who has never seen wrestling before? They may have heard of it. They may have a friend that's kids wrestled, and they're bringing their kid at, let's give them their 10-year-old kid. So it would be what, 5th grade. 10-year-old 5th grader to you for the first time.
Yeah.
How are you welcoming them to the sport of wrestling? What is your elevator's pitch that you get with these kids?
Usually by the time they come to my academy, I don't have to pitch them, right? They're there for a reason. They want to check it out. And this would be, so we have a 5 through 9-year-old class, which is whether you've been there for 1 year or 4 years, it's beginner oriented. And for example, in December, we did a bring your friend night. I think we had 14 kids who brought friends, right?
That's a cool concept.
Yeah. And so it was the last day. So we have a for the young kids, we have a fall session, a winter session, and a spring session. The last day of the session, we did a pizza party, and it was called, Bring Your Friend Day. I think we had 14 friends show up. I believe 5 of them signed up. It could be 6. But what we want, right? And this is not what we did for the one day. This is what we do every day of that class. We have a 1-hour class. It's high energy. It's fun. We're teaching some basic wrestling skills. We're not grinding them at all. We encourage them not to compete. We're not having them cut weight. We strictly want them to have a great experience wrestling, Jason, because we know without a shadow of a doubt, we keep those kids from 5 years old to 9 years old. And all we do is give them a great experience. They want to keep wrestling. By the time they're 10 and they go into our more elite class, right, they're going to have a great base for wrestling. And at 10 years old, if you have a great base for wrestling, you still have 4 or 5 years till you're in high school. So they're going to get where they need to get to. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So this thought process that you have to grind them as a first grader or a second grader or a third grader to get them to have a high level of success is just not true. And so now we've only been open for 6 years, so we're finally getting to the point where we're having some of these kids who came through a 5 to 9 year old program who didn't compete seriously before then, who didn't cut weight before then, who didn't have more than an hour practice twice a week before then. And now these kids are starting to have a high level of success, and so now we can point and say, well, we thought this was going to be right, and now we're proving that it is in fact correct. It's working. And so our mentality with our 5 to 9 year olds, and I would encourage every club to have this as 5 to 9 year olds. It's an hour. It's twice a week. It's high energy. It's fun. Okay, we're not grinding them. We're not competing them. We're not getting to cut a lot of weight. And in our experience, most of them stick around.
There's one thing that we have a problem with in this country, and it's childhood obesity. And I, as a kid who battled some weight struggles my entire life, even into my late 30s now, the benefits of wrestling. That's one thing that for those who are listening that are intrigued by this conversation, they may be one of my friends or one of your friends that aren't wrestling people, but they know a little bit about it, and they want to know another benefit of getting their kids wrestling: the fun aspect, the exercise aspect, basically the byproduct of wrestling is you're getting fit and finding those I guess that honey hole of fun fitness without them really thinking it's exercise. How much does that play into your role with your kids clubs and things of that nature?
Yeah, we don't really attack that, and maybe honestly that's maybe an angle we should attack that we don't. And I know, sometimes I do. I struggle. We're going to get to this point at AWA, but where there's a lot of different angles to attack, right? These barriers to entry. Where a jiu-jitsu class, right? A jiu-jitsu club, they don't have kids in high school that wrestle for the middle school, elementary school that they can go recruit, where we do, right, as AWA, or a karate school, or a taekwondo school, right? They have to go find kids off the street, so they use these bullying angles, and they use these weight loss angles. And honestly, that's probably something we should explore that we haven't even explored yet. Because you're right, childhood obesity is a problem, and bullying is a problem. And so, those are angles we haven't even attacked yet that we probably could and probably should in the future, because it is, I always say wrestling is the greatest martial art on the face of the earth, and it does all those things that a taekwondo or jiu-jitsu or a karate, in my opinion, it does all those things better than any of those sports do, right? Taekwondo says they teach discipline and work ethic. Wrestling does it better, right? So go across the board, wrestling does it better. And so those are probably angles that we need. We haven't even started attacking yet. We probably need to start attacking even more, because Matt Max and I and Coach Mesmer, again, we believe in wrestling. It has given us great opportunity and taught us many, many valuable lessons. And we want to spread that to as many people as possible. And we're trying to give as many people as possible great experiences within the sport of wrestling, because I've said this, I'm like a broken record, at 60%, a lot of kids are having a poor experience. And we're trying to get them to have a great experience in wrestling.
One thing that I've also thought about when we talk about this program is the difference that people need to, you've got a little bit of a more higher elite club, but getting the youth, the entry level clubs that may not necessarily have the best structure, and working with, maybe a little top down there, as say someone like you, finding the local clubs that are going to feed your system. Okay, hey, we're getting that to work together. I mean, that's not on the parents of the kids. That's on the coaches that are looking to recruit kids in. And Talk about the synergy maybe of like the private training clubs and things like we've got Pinnacle out here in Minnesota, which is it's kind of your second level tier. It's not your entry level. What can we do with the entry level clubs to kind of make sure that, hey, this is fun. We're not wrestling 2 practices and going to a tournament. I wrestled 2 practices in my life, and I entered a tournament. That was not a good situation for me.
Is that serious?
That's serious. I was 208 pounds. I wrestled 2 practices. I wrestled 4 hours of my life. And believe it or not, the guy I wrestled was a state runner-up who was looking for the starter from high school.
That's like that's almost like I would say that's child abuse.
I'll say this, though. I wanted to do it because I'd fallen in love with the sport so much, but I was also wearing a pair of shorts and a T-shirt. I was not wearing a singlet my first ever match.
Yeah.
And that's another story entirely. But back to the entry-level clubs, getting them on the same page with people like you and people who really want to make sure that you can have kids. They can send you kids who want to go to the next level because they enjoy the sport and they want to then learn how to get better at it.
Yeah. So we actually had to check ourselves, AW, because we were running 4 practices a week during the youth season, which was then meaning that, the best kids weren't going back to their own local clubs. So we've scaled back to 3 nights a week. And so we have 2 open nights. And so, ideally that the local clubs practice on those 2 open nights so that kids can go back to their local clubs, and their parents can go back to the local clubs and help out. But, I would say the same exact message that I said before about high energy, having fun, teaching the kids how to work hard, but not grinding them too much, right? So giving them I always say giving them a purpose. I guess I should say I've said fun a few times, which, my definition of fun might not be the same as the general public.
And we don't want to get into a Penn State conversation right now, do we? Right?
But I don't. Yeah, I don't. That's a totally separate debate on what was fun. I did a mental Monday on this, or a mental thing on it last. I believe Friday, because the high school coach was asking me about it. So I kind of talked about what I think about in that version. So I don't want to get into that topic again. But anyways, it's the same thing. High intensity, good environment for kids to be in. Not yelling at them constantly, not grinding them, not making them overcompete, not making them cut weight. Those type of things at a young age, especially in a beginner. Why does a beginner need to go compete? It's shenanigans, total shenanigans. Doesn't need to happen. There's no purpose to it. And if we could identify factors, and I would, if I had $5 million, I don't. Hopefully I will in the future. I would pay for the study, Jason, to go study ex-wrestlers and say, what was it about your experience that made you quit? Because I would like to know that. And I've never seen those statistics. Is it the over-competing? Is it poor practice environment? Is it weight cutting? What was it about wrestling that made you quit? And I would really like to know the answer to that, because I can guess. I have pretty good guesses. But, hey, I don't hang out with a bunch of dudes who quit wrestling every day, right? I'm hanging out with a bunch of dudes who are still wrestling. So I can guess on these questions, but I don't have the factual answers to them. So, if I have a huge amount of money, I will spend it on getting that survey done someday, because just for my own curiosity's sake, I would like to know.
And when you say that, you're referring to kids quitting, not necessarily like kids getting into high school and they don't feel like they're getting a starting spot. Or okay, so like I'm behind a state champion. Like I quit my senior year because I was behind regional champion, regional state runner-up, and a heavyweight that was just a lot bigger and stronger than I was. And I was a 1.5-year kid. I worked in a newspaper. My coach, I was kind of I wasn't quitting because I was soft. I was quitting because I had a job, and coach knows, dude, you're not really contributing here. You're still announcing our duels. I mean, I was the announcer who was coming out for wrestling. So I think I'm the asterisk there. But when we look at the situations
and Jason, there might be a lot of those. I don't think you're an asterisk. There might be. Just as is at AWA, we have a handful of kids every year who say, I don't want to play football anymore. I want to be great at wrestling. Or I don't want to play baseball anymore. I want to be great at wrestling. And those kids liked baseball, or they liked football. They didn't have a bad experience in baseball or football, right? And they still quit those sports. So, who knows? Maybe there is a decent percentage that's not having a bad experience, and they're saying, well, I just love this sport more, right? Or I have to get a job because my family needs that. So there might be a percentage, and I don't. That's why, again, I'm guessing at these things. I don't have real answers. I do have real answers that 60% retention year over year is terrible. But I would guess there is a chunk like you where, hey, they actually liked it, but they had to pick something else. Hey, life's hard. We got to make tough choices sometimes.
Well, and I will say this too. I'm going to go back to my coach and give him credit. I mean, and there's kids that quit after certain practices. He always told the team, he's like, he always said when the guys quit, don't give them any crap about it in the hallways. And that was not just me; that was other people. So I always had a positive experience about it. One, we were successful. Two, I took an interest in the sport. Three, I was still announcing the home matches, and obviously we saw where that career led to. And then just generally, I was around the sport, and they even announced me on senior night, and I wasn't a senior in the lineup or anything. So those type of things kept me. I didn't have a bad taste about it. Now, I am curious on changing gears to what you have learned in this, because you've always been kind of outspoken with your opinions and your ideas on how wrestling should be done. What have you learned in the last 6 years? You and Max specifically learned about camp systems and training kids that you thought one way when you started this, and actually going through the practices changed your opinion on it.
Yeah, I would say we've become more moderate. I would say obviously when we started, we weren't in touch with the youth system, and we had this: you guys compete, you guys cut too much weight, and we pushed back really, really, really hard on it. And I would say we've kind of almost come back to not to the middle, because there's too many extreme people in wrestling, but we've came back a little on that. And so, we encourage our 7th and 8th graders to get 40 matches in the year, because, hey, when you wrestle high school, you're going to get 50, right? And we encourage 7th and 8th graders to make weight sometimes, because when you're in high school, you're going to have to make weight, right? And, we encourage some of our high school kids who are competing at a high level, hey, I'm not asking you to cut weight 12 months a year, but maybe for Flow Nationals and maybe for Fargo. Those are important. Part of your future. You want to get a college scholarship, you got to give yourself the best chance of success possible. And so I would say we pushed back too much against some of the wrestling cultural norms, and we've kind of came back a little bit on those. I would say it's kind of how that would kind of surmise our experience. And so I would say I think we were on the right side of it when we made those decisions, and now we've just came back just a little bit. Most of our high school kids don't cut weight most of the year. It's very rare for high school kids to be cutting a lot of weight. We don't overcompete our little kids. That's still the fact, right? But we have encouraged our 5th, 6th, 7th graders, hey, you guys need to go compete more. We have encouraged now some of our 8th graders who are at a high level, you guys need to go seek good competition, right, to get ready for high school. So I would say we came back a little bit.
Again, the program we've been talking about that's coming through January 15th through 21st is Give Wrestling a Shot at GiveWrestlingAShot.com. You can go to that website. If you're a club and you're looking to participate, you can register your club there. If you're a parent and you need to find some clubs, usawrestling.org, themat.com has a list of all those clubs. And Ben, if you've got a moment to talk to these coaches that are sitting there and may not know about this program, they are maybe USA chartered clubs, and maybe they missed the email or something along those lines. What is your, elevator pitch to say, hey, your club should be involved in this because there's a bunch of kids that may want to wrestle. Here's a chance to actually literally give them a shot.
Exactly. Again, I've said this a full of times. I'm a broken record, but yeah, I think wrestling has given me so much that it's hard for me to say where I would be without the sport of wrestling. And so I can't even identify all the characteristics wrestling has given me, because I give it credit for damn near everything. And so there's a lot of kids who are in your school or in your community that the sport of wrestling would give them a lot of opportunities that they're not going to have otherwise, and give them a lot of values that they're not going to get otherwise or other places. So if you're a wrestling coach, you need to go out and seek these kids out and give them a shot, right? So convince them to come in and give wrestling a shot. When they come in, make sure you're giving them a great experience, because if you just understand that if you keep kids out for long enough, they're going to be good at the sport. And then secondly, if you understand that the kids who win state championships are not the only kids who get something out of the sport of wrestling. Every single kid can take some of the sport of wrestling. And as a wrestling coach, that's your job, to give great experiences. So that's what I would say to them. I hope they check out the website. And, if they're, for some reason, they can't arrange it from January 15th to January 21st, that they're doing this stuff other times. I mean, I said AWA did it, in December. So I would encourage people to do this. Obviously, we're trying to do 1 week here, and if there's some way, hey, you can't make that work, do it another time. You should be constantly recruiting new kids in your program, and then trying to give those kids in your program as good of an experience as possible.
And I tell you, I love the Bring a Friend night, because that was one thing that got people involved. Baseball. That's how me and my brother went and play baseball, because a friend invited us to practice for fall ball. I mean, that's how we got into it. It was because of friends. Now, if they're interested in your neck of the woods, I'm just curious. We'll spend a couple minutes talking about the Askren Wrestling Academy at awawisconsin.com. Looking at this, you've got 3 academies: Lake Country, which I'm assuming is in the Lake Country; North Shore, which is where Max is outside of Milwaukee; Packerland, which we got to get. Okay, so locations, where are you situated? Who's running these particular locations?
Sure. So we are 25 minutes north of Milwaukee, 25 minutes west of Milwaukee, and then Josh Wagner opened up in Green Bay, which is our Packerland Academy. So we have 3 locations operating totally year-round. Obviously, you can check out all of our opportunities on awawisconsin.com. And if you don't live in the area, we have a huge summer camp system with a little something for everyone. We have your youth camps, we have your basic technique camps, and we have some elite camps, we have a team camp. So, we got pretty much anything you want. And if you come, I can't guarantee it, but I'm pretty sure you're going to have a great experience, and you're going to leave, whether it's a camp, whether it's the academy, just regular training, you're going to leave more excited about the sport of wrestling than when you came in the door.
And you also got cool names to draw them in. Ninjas in Training, for example.
Exactly. That's part of it, right?
Love that stuff. You and Jake Herbert are actually on the same page on that type of stuff. You want to train a million ninjas.
Exactly, and that's what they come out of that program, being like ninjas.
All right, and time we got left. You can follow Ben Askren on Twitter at Ben Askren. He follows few, but he responds to many. And in time we got left, what's next for you now that the fighting career is over? I mean, you've talked about it in other interviews and on the T-Row and Funky show, but for those who have not kept up with everything of your exploits since you've retired from the MMA world, what's with this Give Wrestling a Shot in the academy? That's obviously a big part, but in the professional world, what are you looking into?
Well, right now I just have my 3rd kid, and I'm focused on growing our wrestling academies. They're going really well between both the academies and the camps. Having a lot of fun, man. We're really having a breakout year. It takes a while to build the infrastructure that you need for kids to have the ultimate level of success, and we're getting to that point. And we're getting more and more kids who are seeing our vision and seeing our mission, and so it's a really fun time to be a part of the academy system. And this is really the first fall and now we're in the winter, that I've coached full time, and so I'm kind of there almost every single day, where that hasn't been the case before. So I'm just having a lot of fun doing that. I think that's probably my future. The world's crazy, so you never know where I'm going to end up, but I'm really enjoying it right now.
Ben Askren again, awawisconsin.com, givewrestling.a-shot.com, and check out all the things USA Wrestling's got at themat.com. And, of course, T-Row and Funky show when you guys, in your busy lifestyle, and Tommy's 900 kids and his avocado collection simmer down. Check that show out. That's one of my favorite listens to each and every week when you guys do it. So it's really cool to get a champion athlete perspective on the things that a lot of us in the podcast world are already talking about.
All right. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it, and hope everyone gives wrestling a shot.
The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Clothing. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. First time listening? Well, you can change that by going to mattalkonline.com/getshorttime to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or listen on your favorite podcatcher at mattalkonline.com/listen.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to mattalkonline.com.